Pictures are coming in from Nigeria where an overnight attack on a village by Boko Haram extremists reportedly killed more than 60 people. And this is what the village now looks like. Many huts were burned to the ground. A survivor from the horrific attack said he heard screams as people were killed by the flames, including children. The assault lasted 4 hours. After scores were murdered, the attackers targeted a neighboring village. 3 suicide bombers blew themselves up among people who managed to escape the first wave of violence. And now to discuss the situation, I'm joined live by Max Abrams, an assistant professor of political science from the Northeastern University in Boston. Thanks so much for joining us, Max. Well, first off, Boko Haram is causing chaos and murdering civilians across Africa, as we see. But why does it receive less attention than other terror groups like ISIL, for example, who it has pledged allegiance to?
Sure, that's a great question. There's a real bias against media coverage of terrorist attacks in Africa and especially in Nigeria. I think many people would be surprised to know, how much killing power the main terrorist group Boko Haram has. It's killed thousands and thousands of people. And if these attacks were against not Nigerians, but say against the French or against Americans or even against the Russians, of course, there would be much, much more media coverage. In general, Africa tends to get short shrift, but there are other reasons as well. The local media in Nigeria isn't as strong as in places in the West, for example. And furthermore, there's a sense that violence is relatively contained, not just to Nigeria, but to Chad and other Niger and other adjacent countries, but that those fighters aren't coming, to attack in, say, San Bernardino, California, whereas Islamic State-inspired people are attacking all over the world. So in that sense, there is a logic to focusing more on Islamic State and the kinds of fighters who are attacking in the West.
Well, Max, one of the key questions, I guess, here is who is financing Boko Haram? Where are they getting all the ammunition from and the money to keep going?
Sure. Again, I think that Islamic State is actually affiliated to Boko Haram. They do have a formal affiliation as of last year. However, when we talk about Islamic State, we generally talk about, where in their stronghold of Iraq and in Syria. In Boko Haram's case, that sort of titular relationship with Islamic State actually isn't that strong. So it's not as if Boko Haram has a lot of international funding from foreign jihadis all over the world. In Iraq and in Syria, the membership composition is much, much more international. Boko Haram is still largely a local game, so they rely on predation of the local population, hostage taking, and just seizing land and territory. But it's still mostly a local operation, although in the media, over social media in particular, Boko Haram likes to pretend as if it's a very international group, highly connected to Islamic State. But the truth is that different affiliates have stronger or weaker relations with Islamic State Central, if you will. The Boko Haram affiliation is relatively detached, unlike the one, say, in Libya, which is actually directed by the Islamic State leadership in Syria.